you have said that you thought no black man should be thinking that way. That's event number one. Event number two is 1978. Tom is participating in a conference of some kind at the University of Washington Law School. You were a young lawyer at Monsanto. You came forward with a copy of Race and Economics to have Tom Sowell autograph. Between those two events, throwing out a book by Tom and having him autograph one of his books, what changed?
Well, I grew up. If you go wind the clock back in April of 1970, I was part of a riot in Harlem Square to free political prisoners. And in 72, I was at Yale Law School. It says all that you need to say about that. And I see this book by a black man, and I immediately reject it reflexively. Then I go, well, as I mentioned to you, when I graduated, I received a grand total of one job offer, and that was in Jefferson City, Missouri. So I added, the beauty of Jefferson City, Missouri is that you actually have time to think, which is in short supply. Both the people taking the opportunity to think and having the time to think seem to not be something that happens as frequently as it should. But I had quite a bit of time and to calm down, and no one was pressing me to be an example of an angry black or an expert on black issues or anything like that. I was just doing initially criminal cases and all the taxes for the state of Missouri. And I had a friend of mine who was a very dear friend, came across an article in early 1975. And he said, Clarence, there's another black guy like you. His name is Thomas Sowell. And it was a review of his book, Race and Economics, in Wall Street Journal by Michael Novak, another wonderful man. And that was the beginning of it. And simply be willing to just go along. So for example, if someone said that this floor were brown, and you said it was tan, and it had been decided that it was tan, and I might think, well, it's more brown than tan, but it could be either one. That's a precedent that you accept, because it could be either one. Both make sense, even though as an initial matter, I might come out differently. Now, if someone had decided earlier that this floor was orange, and we looked at it and said, well, it's obviously not orange, what would you do?
File on the Supreme Court? Yeah, I overturn that precedent.
Well, it's ridiculous. And I think that when something is obviously wrong, we should at least explain it. I was not a dedicated 8th grader, and but we had to take an entrance exam to high school in 1962, and I scored very high on the entrance exam, and it was May of 1962. I remember to this day exactly how she looked at me, what she said. She looked me in the eyes and she said, "You lazy thing, you." And I have yet to forget that. And she was right, and that was her way of saying, you're not using your God-given talent. But again, I go back to the point of attitude. Here we were in a rundown little school in segregated Savannah, Georgia. Everybody knew that. It's like, it's going to be humid in Savannah. This is the condition. Now, what do you do about it? And she was basically saying your attitude has to be much better than what you're displaying, your work ethic, etc. Now, that was consistent with what I heard at home. Even though my grandfather only had 9 months of education, the crown jewel was education. My grandmother went to the 6th grade. For her, the crown jewel. My cousin said, for example, my cousin Addie, who was illiterate and had no education, for her, she looked at us and said, you have a chance to progress. Read with it's sweetened up and there's rose petals, and this is for something to be the right idea. And so what these kids are getting is all that stuff is not there. It's just on YouTube. It's available to everybody. And they get to make up their own mind. The 5 of them or whatever, we sit together and decide whether they agree without all this negative traffic. 5 years later, less than 5 years later, I see his book as a blessing. Those young men, there might be some today who think this particular idea is not a good idea, but then they see another one. But the thing that I heard that impressed me was they said, I didn't think of that. Or, that's interesting. And I thought, there was a video about President Obama. I thought what he said was good. But then, I thought, with Professor Sowell, well, maybe he get into that bit. I have to think about it. That's all. The victory is the fact that they have to think, and they are willing to do it. And I think that will continue.
Justice Hunt,
Why can't you give me those short, pithy things? Next day you can give me the aliens. Let's see, I'll try to read it. The great failure of this country was slavery and its progeny. And the tragic failure of this court was its misinterpretation of the Reconstruction Amendments. We should not repeat this mistake merely because we think, as our predecessors thought, that the present arrangements are superior to the Constitution. The court's opinion sees the university's admissions policies for what they are: rudderless, race-based preferences designed to ensure a particular racial mix in their entering classes. These policies are plainly and boldly unconstitutional. And that's a hard thing to do. If you think of how few people were willing to before even just think about Plessy. How many members of the court took the right position in this? So why would you expect people to be different? Okay, and it is not easy to stand against howling winds. It is not easy to, and not a lot of people will stand with you when things are looking the worst. And such discrimination, I hold out enduring hope that this country will live up to its principles so clearly enunciated in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States, that all men are created equal, are equal citizens, and must be treated equally before the law.